everyone! Today we are talking about the technique of practicing in small sections. What is it and what do I have to gain from doing it? Now today's video is really going to be geared a little bit more towards piano students. So if your instrument is your voice, make sure to check back here next week because the video next week will be on a similar idea but really targeted towards voice students on how to make the most of working in smaller sections in your pieces. But today we're really focusing on piano. So to start, let's actually get into what does it mean to practice in small sections. Well, just like a lot of other really helpful things, it's actually pretty basic and it is exactly what it sounds like. Say we're learning a new piece and we are covering a new passage that is 8 measures long. Instead of powering through the entire 8 measures every single time you work on it, small sections practice would just be dividing it up into smaller pieces, say 2 measures at a time, and working on each section one at a time that way. It's pretty funny because most of the time in music, in sports, in any craft that requires a lot of hours of dedication and practice and honing your skill in order to become good at it, it's a lot of the simplest things that really pay off big. And this sounds like one of them, right? It's a very simple idea. But think about what a coach says to you in sports practice. We've got to work on the fundamentals, right? So this is one of those things that, again, sounds pretty basic, but can actually be very helpful to you. And today I'm going to talk about 3 of my favorite reasons why I will actually encourage students to practice this way quite a bit. It's really kind of a rite of passage with a lot of my piano students. If you take piano lessons from me, you can pretty much bet that at some point I am going to assign you a new piece of a song and recommend that you work on it in small sections for the week. And the first area that I feel like this is really helpful to students is when it comes to increasing your mental stamina throughout a practice session. So what does that mean? Well, we all kind of have a certain capacity for focusing on new information. And practicing in small sections is actually really helpful for extending the life of your mental capacity for new information within one practice session. So again, we're going to look at that example of your new section is 8 measures long, but for your small section practice, we're only looking at 2 measures at a time. Now, say you sit down to work on it, and you only really have a couple minutes to spend on this one particular section of the piece. Now, if it would normally take you 1 full minute to get through all 8 bars start to finish, that's a full minute that your brain is spending on processing new information. However, if we break it up into 2 measures at a time, let's say now it only takes you 15 seconds to get through 2 measures. So for the same minute of practice time, you can actually go through that small section 4 times for the same amount of practice time. Your brain is actually not spending a full minute on processing new information. You're just spending the first 15-30 seconds on feeling like it's really brand new, because after that you kind of start to remember, all right, okay, this is how that goes. Yeah, I did this before. Okay, well, by the end of that minute, you're kind of in a better spot mentally to go on to the next passage. Now, overall, you still would be spending a good amount of your practice time focusing on new information, but you're actually giving your brain breaks in between those new passages, because instead of just focusing on mega chunk of 8 measures at a time, you're doing littler pieces. So by the time you get to the end of that 2 measures, your brain's a little bit more comfortable with it and ready to gear up for the next set of 2 measures. Overall, it's kind of a better approach to kind of build in break time during your practice for your brain. You're going to increase your overall mental stamina for this particular section of music. Now, the next benefit from practicing this way is that you're going to be more likely to catch any mistakes that are showing up as you go through this new section. Again, we're taking that same example, 8 measure passage, but broken up into 2 measures at a time. If you're just spending a longer amount of time on one smaller part of that, again, you're going through it several times in a row, and you're going to be a lot more likely to catch any mistakes that are showing up there than if you were to go through a much longer section and then come back around and do the whole thing again. For the purpose of making sure that you're practicing it correctly, this can be really helpful because you're going to be a lot more likely to catch any mistakes. And the last thing that I want to touch on for today is that practicing this way can actually do a lot of good for your psychological and emotional well-being when it comes to learning your instrument. You're going to start to notice some better results for the time that you're putting in because you're only working on a smaller piece of the song instead of the larger piece all at once every single time. So that's going to actually be more motivating and encouraging to you because you're going to feel like, oh yeah, this is really coming together. And then the next day that you work on it this way, you're going to start to pick up those 2 measure sections even faster. And it's really going to feel like this great snowball effect and keep motivating you and encouraging you to press on and learn more and more because you actually feel like you're getting somewhere with it. So it's really just such a great way to practice smarter and really keep you hooked for the long run. A lot of people end up struggling with feeling like they have lost momentum or they're really just stuck on a plateau, and that can be a very difficult barrier to overcome. Eventually, we all have to face those barriers at multiple times in the course of learning an instrument and being a musician. And breaking through those plateaus is really character building and reminds you that yes, this is worth continuing to do, but this is a really great way to push through some of those plateaus and to really get the most out of those stretches of time where you are just in love with what you're doing and with your music and just enjoying that process. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. I'm really enjoying bringing you these videos as another resource. And voice students, don't forget, I'll be back next Friday with a video specifically for you. So have a great week, and I will see you then.